Three, two. Yes, welcome to another second edition, if you will. Started out with the Deep Dive, continuing over to Beyond the Veil. Official relaunch. Yours truly, Jay Drizzy, aka Jay Drews. My man, Emmanuel, co-captain, co-chair, co-host with the most. Original music by Jay Drizzy. Thanks for tuning in. We're gonna get a better intro for y'all to come. Don't worry. We wanted to get it going. So without further ado, how's it going, my brother?
All is well, man. Perfected resonance right now. Doing good.
Indeed, all is well. Yes, perfected resonance to all, to all perfected residents. I'm your co-host, Jay Drizzy. Yo, we're going to kick off with Beyond the Veil, your podcast for everything you ever wanted and then some to discuss. Esoteric information, the unusual, the strange, the peculiar, the spiritual, the ethereal, the supernatural, the natural, and everything in between. So, what's going on, my brother?
Man, everything is going good. Everything is going good. All is well.
Yes, indeed. I wish we could get you at a closer. Here we go. We'll do it that way. A little too close on me, but hey, it's good to be seen. It's good to be seen. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way, but yeah, I can see my brother a little better with this vantage point. So we'll roll with this. So today's topic of discussion, one of many of the few topics that we selected to get into, spiritual genetics and the Hollywood connection. Uh, there's a lot of buzz around social media and a lot of videos, short clips, and others about this connection to bloodlines and those who are in the limelight or viewed as stars slash celebrities, entertainers, etc., and the link to previous lives, timelines, or existences. Um, but let's get into it, bro.
Yeah. I don't even know where to begin. I can say this. I can say first, genetic information comes with when the sperm meets the egg. That sperm has within it, I think it translates to 15 1,500 terabytes of information.
Mm.
So, when that meets the egg, that genetic information is included in it is the instructions for the body, the instructions for the composition of the mind, the instruction for the composition of the heart, and everything comes with that first exchange. So, if you're in a bloodline and you got information that keeps going through the bloodline or something that y'all perfecting in the bloodline, whether it be carpentry, whether it be you come from a long line of teachers, you come from a long line of preachers, after so many generations, that information becomes genetic information. So if somebody wanted to, get somebody that they were going to know that was good at preaching, then you would go to a preaching line to get somebody who's an expert in that field because it passes down through generations. So that's something interesting to think about in alignment with spiritual DNA.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what role does that knowledge play within um, the influence of, let's say, entertainers, celebrities, political figures, technocrats, bureaucrats, so on and so forth?
Mm. So if you got a group of individuals who was good at being chiefs, you know what I mean? They were the lineage of chiefs. The chiefs came from their bloodline for uh, North Carolina. You know what I mean? The same way those genetic relations for a chief would come, people would have an affinity for people in that bloodline. So when they see them, there would be almost a genetic response to those particular people. So if you got the I don't know if I should even but if you got the boule, you got a group of melanated individuals who are have to be melanated and have to be wealthy. They call that group the Council of Chiefs. And then they have individuals from specified bloodlines that they keep incorporating into this group. And then they send them to politician offices and Hollywood offices, music offices, and they find out what they're good at, and then they exploit that to utilize it to rule the same way that they may have been ruled. Like if they were a chief, then they utilize it to say he's a chief, to wear chief clothing. So when people look at this person, they can identify them as a chief. They can feel as if a chief, but then they give them a agenda. Like instead of in your song saying what you was gonna say, we're gonna ghost write this for you. When you act in this movie, I want you to act this way and do this thing. Then those same people who were utilized to rule and teach and do all of those things genetically are now utilized for somebody else instead of for helping people or benefits. They use for personal gain instead of like their position and role in the culture.
Hmm. So the old switcheroo.
Yeah.
The old switcheroo, bait and switch. So are you saying that these people are literally replicas or clones, allegedly?
Mm. I've heard that they're clones. I've heard that some of them are born. I heard that some of them become problems and then get replaced. I've heard all types of things about how they keep regenerating the same genetic information.
Sure, sure. We've all heard probably similar stories. Well, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of us these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us who've been tracking the information a little while before it was even a popular subject of discussion or even considered a relative possibility, so to speak, in reality. Um, but these be connected to other beings that could be defined as people, but not necessarily completely human.
It depends on how you view a human. If you view a human as just a house for a spirit, if you think that a body is inhabited by a spirit, then that would be something from outside of the world in somebody, in somebody's body. So if they get two people from a bloodline and then they give them a name of an old person, an older person or a past person, that potentially stores information. I mean, and this is where I get that from. So in ancient Egyptian perception, they say a Ren is a part of the soul. And that Ren is a part of the soul, and Ren translates as name. So you got these Hollywood people who be doing birthing rituals. They'll have somebody consummate, and then they'll have a child born. and this child will be in a organization because they were born into it. You know what I mean? And that might be I don't know, an example of that. That might be an example of that.
So organization could take on a whole nother meaning as if possibly in parallel or equality to an organism that is comprised of these different families and their progeny. Uh-oh. He must have had to step out in order to step back in to fix his connection. So yeah, many of you have, I'm sure, have come across videos, shorts, etc. Here he is coming right back in. All right.
Oh, sorry about that, man. That signal drop. Sorry about that, man.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Uh, so you were saying,
Yeah, that just I think that they use those. I think that they use those rituals to bring those people in. So and they use those names or the last names or whatever to keep bringing recycling these people.
hmm,
Just a thought, allegedly.
sure, absolutely, allegedly, but very interesting nonetheless. I mean, more and more we have people, from the industry, people who are in the industry, on the fringe, on their way out, back in, et cetera, et cetera. Just many different states of being. For example, shout out to Orlando Brown.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Shout out to Orlando
he's
Brown.
definitely one that's been quite vocal and mince no words whatsoever about who is who, like literally who is who, based on his perception and
Mhm.
alleged insight, which I wouldn't call into question without having the opportunity to speak to the brother. So shout out Orlando Brown, you know, hit us up, make make us aware if you, even happen to stumble across us in the in the keyword search of some sort, whatever algorithm, both of us are definitely huge. I don't even want to use the word fan supporters of
Yes,
of seeing you restored and
indeed,
even and beyond restoration to what we believe is your rightfully talented place, in the sun, uh,
indeed, indeed.
so but yeah, he's one, definitely. We have
Jaguar Wright. Got to give
Jaguar,
her
right?
a shout.
Got to give her credit where credit is due.
Yeah,
Love you, Tag. Love you. I understand. What I'm saying, we understand uh, what you're talking about. Not just in the expose sense, but just even in the day to day pressure sometimes of what can be placed in your pathway when you start to speak up about the truth and perception that is shared by you as well as many others. More increasingly, the numbers come forward, but shout out to you for doing it early, uh,
hmm
consistently,
fearlessly,
fearlessly.
fearlessly.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, man. So, gosh, we got to get into this. So, all right, yeah, it's like you said earlier, where to begin, right?
Right, right, right.
We hear about all these rituals, and we even see what we some of us perceive to be rituals, right, being done right in our right in our presence or right before our eyes, so to speak. Um, what are the origins of some of these rituals, and what is the goal? What's the end game?
I think the end game may be the just what you said, the switch and bait, the replacement.
Hmm.
If you okay, so the science of reincarnation may have been known by indigenous peoples around the world. Then you have a group of people who come in and they take that information away. and then they utilize that information to benefit them in the sense that they can come back over and over again. They know how to come back over and over again. And so they'll know how to utilize that. And even with the rituals that we see in their experience, the movie Rosemary's Baby, the how do you say this diplomatically? The sacred energy exchange rituals that they do. I think that those are directly for the sake of bringing somebody back through. And then their end game is to utilize that person's power, that person's knowledge, that person's genetic information to benefit their pockets, family, all of that type of stuff. All of that type of stuff. The way Hollywood exploits, just an example, the way Hollywood exploits musicians. A musician will come in like Prince or Michael Jackson or just BB King, Jimi Hendrix, these people who have musical genius that came here with them. And then they'll utilize them to make millions of dollars to pump specific messages to the masses. You know what I mean? And they'll be utilized in that way. And then if they want to get free, like Prince wrote slave on his jar or whatever, if they want to get free, then usually these same type of people who may be implementing these plans allegedly may have them removed because they're not fulfilling their agenda or their order. You know what I mean?
So do you think it's ever possible that these clones go rogue?
Yes.
And yes, pun intended to the Star Wars franchise. Clone Wars and the Rogue One. Anyhow, y'all should check those out. That's the story of the Anunnaki and so much more, all comprised into one. And we're talking about ancient family and current family. So, but yeah. So, what you think happened with like Lupe? No. Was it? Yeah, Lupe Fiasco.
I don't know. Tell me about this.
Well, he says that he can confirm that they have cloning centers, and one of them was in Atlanta.
Trippie Redd, they got a little rapper named Trippie Redd that says the same, and he said they was in Atlanta too. That the station was in Atlanta.
He's from nearby my hometown. He's from Canton originally. He has a brother, if I'm not mistaken, that passed away. I want to say in an automobile accident that was very questionable circumstances surrounding. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Lupe said I don't know that he escaped it per se or just walked out and didn't agree, or if he did agree, but you have the artist, songwriter Janelle Monáe, who, whether jokingly or not jokingly, was telling, was it Jimmy Kimmel, one of the late night hosts, that she had a few clones, and one was in the studio right at that current moment while she was being interviewed. Kevin Hart stated that he had 3 clones.
I heard then there was a female who is kind of like that one female that's been through the industry quite a bit. They had an interview with her. She was talking about in the early 90s, the price of a clone was, I forget her name right now. I can't give her name.
I know the sister you're talking about. I saw the interview too. Yeah. Maybe we should have researched that one, but nonetheless, it's circulating.
Yeah, it's circulating.
So we got quite a few, and all of these people I noticed are melanated. What do you think is up with that aspect of it? These people of a swarthier, more darker hue like ourselves.
I think this has to do with that genetic information, those terabytes. It's got to do with those genetic terabytes that they house, and then and they try to keep them amongst the organization. If they marry, Cat Williams talked about it in his interview. He was like, he got the I think he was talking about Steve Harvey. He said Steve Harvey got the pretty light skinned wife, and isn't it funny that they keep getting these pretty light skinned wives or whatever? You know what I mean? And then for the men, you got Kanye West who finds himself with Kim Kardashian, and for a little while they have children, and then they separate. And this happens with a lot of people who got these specific bloodlines. They'll end up marrying in through Hollywood, having children in through Hollywood, and then being disposed of if they don't agree with everything Hollywood is telling them to present or presenting to them. So, you know, in alignment with that.
So, oddly enough, for some to learn, media has its origins in Germany in a very specific time period where you had Adolf Hitler and his Knights of the Teuton, or Teutonic Knights, or German Templar Order, the SS.
SS Western World.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we're looking at the beginning of a system later in America called the Beast, started by the first supercomputer, and then there was a whole slew of scientists that were working on different types of scientific research, some of which would, deal with methods of transferring consciousness
Mm-hmm.
into other so-called human bodies or even machines.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care to elaborate on that at all? Or
I'll do more of this. That there's uh what is his name? What is that man's name? How am I forgetting his name? Um, he does the Tesla cars and stuff.
Elon Musk? Yeah, gotcha.
Elon Musk. Elon Musk is working on making the brain downloadable. And then if you have clones, if you can make a brain downloadable, or you can make consciousness downloadable, and then there's the creation of clones, then there's nothing holding you back from recreating a person over and over again. And if a person got rights to land, Jay, just a thought, just while we on this, if a person got rights to land, you know what I mean, and they got the whole New York is they hold a loyal title under that name for New York. Then if that person dies, New York will be split up between their family. But if that person just keeps on
Mm-hmm.
living, I'll say it that way. If that person just keeps on living, then that they get the land rights remain with whoever got control or whoever handles that star or superstar. That's how they remain in control of those estates.
So, in other words, it would not be unforeseeable that a person could come back as their own progeny or child, offspring. And
Yes.
it is
Yes.
very possible that in some instances they could come back as a projected family member
Mm-hmm.
and not look exactly alike, but share similar phenotypes, eye shape, facial structure.
It's not the body they're after, it's the information. It's the genetic information.
Well,
They're not after the
yeah,
features.
yeah. I get it. I get it. I'm hoping the audience will be following this as well. Like, so, for example, why did Michael Jackson choose to have children with whom he chose to have children with? I mean, at one point he was married to the king of rock and roll's daughter, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whom she stated she was in love with Michael, but she found it difficult to deal with his obsession with learning details about her father's alleged escape from death or through death publicly, but you know, privately being able to continue on as someone else. I mean, if cloning's been around as long as it has, which I would say is debatable, but you ask Mr. Billy Carson, which I'm tend to be more in agreement with, thousands of years versus the birth of genetic science in the modern world at the turn of the last century.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they've been able to do this, meaning those who have the scientific and or financial means. Um, why not just clone Elvis and let him out of his contract? Why make him stay and perform at this hotel when his music's been celebrated and listened to the world over? Why force Michael Jackson's hand after gaining control of his masters and 87% of the Beatles' masters and Jackie Wilson's masters and James Brown's masters? I mean, 25% of the country and Western music artists signed to any subsidiary of Sony Records with 50% ownership in that enterprise. Why force him to live pillar to post towards the end of his days? What are we missing? Why not just clone him and tell him, hey man, sign here? The clone continues to get all the paparazzi and the attention and the problematic public life while you get to just enjoy the coffers of the financial gain that's being afforded you.
I think I think this may potentially have to do with their tendency at the end of their life to see the error in their ways.
Ooh, an error
Yeah, to to see
with
that they gave up.
such technology, an error. Mm.
They feel like they made a mistake. They may have been granted. They what Brown, Orlando Brown. He says that once they get to a certain height in their development, he said these people that they think are dead are still alive,
Hmm.
and they're still in operation. You know what I mean? And they with that said, you can transfer out peacefully, or if they move into that rebellion that comes with older experience, wisdom, where you start seeing things clearly. If they're operating in that, then they want to get them out of here as quick as possible. Especially if they've contracted and they say, we're not going to say this, we're not going to step against you, we're not going to do this, and then in their old age they finally realize it. Then all they got to do is scratch that one and make another one. You know what I mean? But that's again, if cloning is a reality like that.
I mean, the Atra Haziz says it's a reality. The Enuma Elish said it was a reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Even the
mean,
biblical text will tell you that they came in the spirit of Elijah, the spirit of so and so, and these will be people who died already, but they're looking at another person and saying, "You are so and so, and you are Elijah, you're Moses, you're you know what I mean." Over
yeah,
again.
yeah. Who do men say that I am? What do they say?
Mm-hmm.
Who are they saying that I remind them of? Some are saying you are Elias come again, or one of the major prophets. I am not Elias, but my cousin John, who came before me as a voice. That was Elias come again, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the denial all day and all night of the belief in reincarnation within that particular religious body It's still a point of contention. Why would it be a point of contention if you've accepted the canon of script that you read from and believe in? You overlook that, or it's not taught. So, long story short, it's been spoken of in ancient texts and even not so ancient texts like the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ancient meaning, of course, from antiquity, which I don't think the Bible would be considered originated in antiquity. It might have information and compiled quotes from earlier books.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And from antiquity, but yeah, but it's still even in that as a lot of people's blueprint that I'm not knocking, by the way. Um, it tells you,
Mm-hmm.
that they were okay. If they're grafting trees and they're grafting flowers and other plants. If broccoli is a hybrid
Mm-hmm.
vegetable, why wouldn't there be people that have been already cloned? I mean, you think stem cell was something they just thought of within the last 40 years or so? Not you, but I'm saying
What do
to
they
know
do with placentas? What do they do with uh
unborn fetuses.
right? What do they do with all of this genetic information? What's happening with it? You know what I mean? It's if I
Replication and duplication for
if
experimentation.
I had my daughter, and when I had her, we had the Lotus birth or whatever. But then when my son came, we went to a different hospital. So I
Hmm.
wanted to do the Lotus birth there, and I wanted to keep the placenta, which holds the stem cell, because I don't want them having my son's stem cell. You know what I mean? So I decided to keep. You know what they told me? While she was on the table giving birth, they said that I can't have it, that they don't do Lotus births. And I said, can you, what, I want it. If you don't do Lotus births, that's fine. I want the placenta. They said we can't give you that either.
We walked out with all four of the five of my children. We walked myself and their mother walked out with her placenta.
Awesome.
I
Awesome.
engaged that conversation as well, and I pushed it to the point of signatures, and they wanted it as well. I didn't force them, but I let them know what was going to take place with the placenta if they didn't claim it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to do it with or without their consent, the same way that banks lend money that you have sitting in an account with them. So, why not get a procurement contract and make them
They call it a bank, Jay. They call
Mhm.
it a
Placenta
bank.
bank?
Yeah, yeah. They call it a bank. So what are you doing at a bank? Are you human trafficking at the bank?
Oh, harvesting.
Mm,
Harvesting human organs for the purpose of medicinal value.
mm.
Yeah. But the one, we didn't walk out with her. She came early. She was 3 months early. And she was, of course, preemie.
Mhm.
So I wasn't able to be in there for that procedure because it was a medical procedure as opposed to a live birth.
Mm.
But yeah, so I mean, these practices, of course, even the more simpler ones, the more basic in understanding, they all have a common connection or common thread through the use of human genetics in order to engineer better humans or to replace faulty parts that seem to be wearing out before their warranty is up, uh, or after their warranty is up on the human machine.
Mhm. And then, I got to go back to that land thing again, man. I ran across some information the other day that was talking about Iroquois Confederacy, and talking about how women are the only one who actually own land, and everything else is by lien or it was signed over by someone who is related to the alloidial title holders for lease.
We're not supposed
And
to talk about these types of things. Kidding.
with that said, that is, if that's another thing to pay attention to heavily in who's doing the cloning. You know what I mean? Like the reason they always say follow the money back, follow the paper, you know what I mean? Everything like that. Because the people who are doing this type of stuff have to have access to quite a bit in order to fulfill what they're working on. You know what I mean? And to
Facts.
continue so that's why, you pay attention to them, because they're the ones who also have the most to lose. If I operate in my genetic code, you operate in your genetic code, who knows what type of estate we have? You know what I'm saying? Like if the genetic information has been storing up over a bunch of time for this area, then when we get to this area, our genetics may activate. You know what I mean? So when you got a handler, Hollywood handler, the Hollywood handler is going to keep you away from going over there, keep you away from associating with these people, keep you in this beautiful home. I'll give you a mansion if you just stay here. You know what I mean? And that's another interesting aspect to genetic information. They always provide these stars with handlers. And I remember reading, just to add on, I remember reading in a book called The Emerald Tablets of Thoth. I remember them saying there that you're a star trapped in a body. That's the exact words they use. You're a star trapped in a body. And it's interesting that the people who have handlers and the people who are being watched like that, they call them stars and superstars, which is
Correct.
an interesting thing.
Definitely, it ties into the whole realm of manipulative magic. Some would say witchcraft that is constantly purported and reported on. I mean,
Mhm.
even down to pharmakia. You deal with alchemy. Pharmakia is the root word for pharmacy or pharmaceuticals, right? Many people know that, and many people are very knowledgeable of that area. I have a cousin that is a doctor of pharmacy. These compounds, complexes, potions, anecdotes oftentimes are compiled to have. Give me one moment. So, say that to say, some of the addictions that they're claiming that these stars suffer
Mm,
are induced
mm,
as opposed to just introduced. Some of them, in order to perform at the height of their abilities and talents, have to have certain aspects of the brain shut down so that superior focus can be given to the talent to
mm-hmm.
display the ability, especially in front of hordes. And yes, I use that word on purpose, or crowds of people who don't always really have their best interest at heart, but are interested in being entertained by their energy.
Mm. And then what happens on those stages go from those crowds to trending, to being viewed by the children on a consistent basis, and so forth and so on. All of those different types of avenues of whatever information they are using that person or that star to say or to convey.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, and it goes for other talented people. in their vein of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Writers, novelists, screenplay writers, storytellers, comedians,
Teachers.
teachers. I mean, you have, a certain genetic pool assigned to certain types of people. And I think that oftentimes, not that I have the patented understanding on this, just saying my awareness has grown and has been expanding to see on various layers in society, types of people, why they have personality tests, why they have intelligence quotient measurement tests, and why they emphasize certain intelligence quotients over other intelligence quotients as more important or desirable, etc.
Even blood types. When you get into blood types, some blood types are highly sought after. If you get into the negative bloodlines, you get into the O negative, A negative. These bloodlines, they're like, how do I say this nicely? They're the most sought after to produce leadership, is how I will say this. And
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. There's no question. But it's all in a matter of perception and how people perceive their surrounding reality. Um, there's people that would say, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous. What you're talking about, that is not really a thing. That's so not a thing that I'm just appalled that you would waste your breath and have a conversation." But when you meet certain people, and it's almost like they're magnetically drawn to the place that you are when you're not looking or searching for anything in particular. I'm not talking about significant others right this moment. I'm speaking of chance meetings with strangers, as one might perceive it to be, in an airport that bears the last name of something you've been researching historically, and then reveals to you that people from your particular country tend to be ignorant of the knowledge of the importance of names as such, and that they, in fact, were a key family in the preservation of a specific landmass or island during a very particular conflict. And their family controls shipping that primarily comes from that particular region of the world, and specific products like anchovies and oil and petroleum and um, olive oil, high commodities. Okay. Um, this very small family, though, come from a very small group of people from one specific place of Africa, and no one would ever associate them with the part of Europe that they now hail from. So you're looking in the wrong places when someone says family. You're looking at skin folk who are not, in fact, your kinfolk, and you're
not
looking
even
at other folk as skin folk that are your real kinfolk. But because you've been taught this race theory, you
that,
completely ignore your family, and they can't help you.
that's part of that replacement
Right.
scheduling that we were talking about earlier. It's you'll see original people who are one skin tone, and then you'll see after colonization those same people are under a different skin tone, a new dialect, a new religion, uh, uh, um,
Yes.
and the culture, the original color, and the original name may even transfer in unto the conqueror's children. It may, you get what I'm saying? Like it may be, uh, um, your name was Gullah over here, and then Gullah was taken over, and then you intermingle with the conqueror intermingled with you,
Mhm.
voluntarily or involuntarily,
Right.
uh, giving rewards to mingle or not giving rewards to mingle, giving contracts and treaties to mingle or not giving contracts and treaties to mingle. But the mingling, after it happened, produced people who carried the same name as the original ones, but did not have the same culture, did not have the same way of life, did not have the same, none of that. None of
So
that.
Man, this ties into another conversation you and I have had a few different times, a few different ways. The sacrifice is the exchange. So, what would I give for a more peaceful coexistence? And the other group has to ask, what would they give for a more peaceful coexistence? So then the unpopular choice would be to amalgamate. And there would be those who were amalgamated for nefarious and dubious purposes, and those who were amalgamated out of love and the general best interest at heart of all involved. And then it would be it's so ironic that the ones who did it for love and the best interest of everybody involved would become the target of those who are the result of the ones who did it for nefarious and dubious reasons. So the ones who did it for nefarious and dubious reasons hunt down the ones who did it for love and the higher purpose and the best interest of everyone involved. And so those who choose not to be involved, then they take a one-sided vantage point against those who did it for love and the best interest, because they view it as only selling out. That could be the only reason why you chose to take that on. Well, what about the meeting that you weren't invited to where we decided to switch places because
Oh,
because there was people after both sides, and there really wasn't a side of us versus them to begin with. We had a predator versus those who have been labeled as prey, but in their perfect environment are the predator. So they understand predatory ways, and they understand why one might take those on as their only hope, right? So then
hmm
they come to a whole different conversation.
I
But the way,
know.
go ahead.
Well, no, I just want to add on right there. I know a person that I'm not going to name, and I'm not going to name their organization. But I know a person who is a part of an organization who is stealing his family's land, and he's aware of their thievery, and he stands in that organization and is proud to be a part of it. Because if I call, well, if his family members called him and said that they needed somewhere to live, his response is, "Oh, I got the place on over here, or the place over here, or the place over here where you can live." And his contingency for being in that organization that he knows that they're doing wrong is at least he has access to the land. At least he can give
that
it
means
to.
that decision is beyond him. It was made for him. He was born into the situation in real time.
And he was.
hmm That's what we often overlook, and so we condemn the person as opposed to the energy governing the person's lack of actions, words, lack of speaking up. I mean, you look at entertainment, for example, sports in particular. The individual can exceed and excel any barrier once there's a handler placed. And as long as they don't buck what the handler has to say, unless they see a better route than the handler, and they even bring it to the handler, like, when we go on this press conference and you start talking about this, I'm going to go off for a brief second on a rant. Well, why would you do that? Because if I just sit there while you say what your canned speech is already programmed to say, they're going to know I'm full of crap. So keeping the brand means not letting them know how full of crap I am. So I have to push back while the cameras are rolling, while the pens are moving on the pads.
Farrakhan.
Right. Not alone, but indeed. I mean, one of my favorite basketball players, he has the Sphinx in the wings, right in the middle
hmm
of his chest.
hmm
Didn't
hmm
even attend college. Skipped college. He was too good. Yet you still have people comparing him to one who came through the dog's house after 2 years of college, I want to say, or at least 1 year, not even making his freshman or sophomore team in high school. and there's a debate over who's the GOAT, right? But they're all riding the GOAT, so who gives a crap?
And then it interesting the mother scenario too with that discovery of the women are the actual title holders and distributors of the land. It's interesting to note how many people who joined these societies lost their mother
Mm.
before their fame was skyrocketed.
A little further down that spiral, she's not only the deed holder, she's the land patent holder. How do you patent a land? You have to make significant modifications, adjustments, and additions to it, like mounds,
Mm,
cahokia,
mm,
riverbeds, streams that come off of the river. I mean, some of those things are done by the natural force of water and its free flow. Some of it was because they caused pressurized points within a riverbed that would shoot through certain dirt and rock and hillsides and create other water sources for irrigation
yeah.
um, and watering holes for those who were traveling.
In Mexico, I mean in Mexico, and where the Aztec that whole area right there is known for the level of water farming that they did. We don't even have much that compares to it today. They utilize the surface of the water like we utilize the dirt.
I wonder why they call that Mesoamerica, and they had similar technology in Mesopotamia.
Mm, mm,
Hmm. Could
mm.
they have been the same people?
I
Um,
mean, and they must have been
Possibly.
replaced.
And yeah, and then replaced by a mixed group of people
Mm,
whose name literally means mixed people, but it's the
mm,
name of a country also in that same region or
mm.
above that region slightly. But nonetheless, right, we'll just be good little boys and girls and believe what we're told, won't we? So we don't have to have a handler when we get a little bit of money
Mhm.
that tells us we can't help people who are struggling like we once were before, we figured it out. And they'd rather they have a perception that we made a deal to get where we are. So the people that get offended by that, that's still it's like, wow, how do you get to that apex without having had confronted that prior to the reaching the apex? You had to clearly know by all the other people who were there before you got there, when you were still back with the other people that's still talking, that's the perception until it becomes your reality, and then all of a sudden it's like, who's you suck, who's
They they portray them as I had an individual who was tried and convicted of pedophilia. Because of the good that he did for his community, there were people up in arms and ready to war over this man's
freedom.
name.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it blew my mind. I'm like, no matter what they present to you about a person, no matter what a person may present to you, a person may present you a bar of gold. And that bar of gold may buy you a house, it may buy you a car, it may buy your children some clothes and stuff like that. But if the person just cracked somebody over the head and took they gold bars, then you don't look at the person who handed you the gold bar as a good man. You can't, because he just cracked somebody over the head to get the gold bars. But that's how they're viewing these people who are selling out their bloodlines, selling
Peace and
out their
love,
estate.
Sandy says. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our first commenter and online supporter in real time. Of course, thank you to all of our followers, subscribers, Schwebel Room. Shout out to all of the whole crew, 3PMD, Dirty 30, Deeper Dive Dialogues Unlimited, uh, everybody. But thank you so much. Yes, Sandy says you are a rebel for sure. Yes, indeed. Thanks for joining this conversation, and hopefully it is fire and holding the interest of everyone. But yo, bro, man, um, what you were just saying, it almost becomes like a situation where Sun Tzu says, "My enemy's enemy is my friend." But what is
Mhm.
a friend? A friend is a fiend, but a fiend can quickly turn from an ally to a foe, right? It could quickly turn from a supporter to a tyrant. Um, I should say a what's the word I'm looking for? Co-ruler, joint ruler to a tyrant that now wants to become despot or dictator, even over what you have control over. And so oftentimes this is what we are witnessing. This is oftentimes what we are witnessing in
Can I throw an interesting story out right there? Right there, what you're saying?
absolutely.
Elijah Muhammad died.
Okay. Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Elijah Muhammad died, and Farrakhan and his son went over to Orthodox.
Sunnah.
Um,
Right. They became Sunnah.
and when they did that, Farrakhan realized that he would not be in a position of power, and he left Elijah Muhammad's son in that organization and started his own. And that's the Nation of Islam that we see today was what he started from that. Interesting note about him in relation to what we spoke about earlier. He is a part of an organization, and this is free information. You can go look up yourself. You can see him holding his honorary degrees. You can see him in his full garb. You can see him sitting at the meetings for the same organizations that we were speaking about earlier, whose mission, for lack of better terminology, is to usurp um, people who are stepping back into their knowledge of their lineage, knowledge of their power, or back into their land. And so you have a whole nation who was taken by this individual, and who is now um, under their leadership, and they haven't acquired any land except his homes and his restaurants and his, you know what I mean? They haven't acquired anything for the collective, if I can say it like that. They haven't raised anyone in power other than within their organization. Interesting note. I just wanted to add right there. Mm, mm.
Hmm. Very interesting, though. Yes, it's interesting enough that before these photos became public, I was doing a little research myself. Some things I was taught back even in the seventh and eighth grade by one of my early mentors. Love to the family in memory of Alfred D. Coward, Elder Alfred D. Coward, Youngstown, Ohio, Mount Calvary Pentecostal Church of the Apostolic Faith, where I spent a lot of my time growing up and cut my teeth in discussion, research, and debate. But he taught us these anomalies within our perceived reality, even back then. And as the story would go, even some interesting master teachers that were allegedly the early instructional facilitators for W.D. Farad Muhammad, also called Farad the God by some, um, the one who was honored on their Savior's Day that preceded the most honorable Elijah Muhammad as his teacher. Um, and some other not so savory types, as some might see in the spirit community of the last century turn, early 1900s into the late 1800s. We had some people named Timothy Drew, uh, Madame Helena P. Blavatsky, a well-known occultist from Eastern Europe. Um, a man named Pascal Beverly Randolph, a man of mulatto alleged mixed race heritage from the state of New York, a very well trained and astute physician, but also Enochian sex magician and occultist himself. So these were allegedly contributors to the knowledge base that was is being still currently passed on to our people who choose to live their lives as associated Black Muslims, and that's no slight, no knock, and no uh, thumbing of the nose towards those brothers and sisters
No
who
way.
consider themselves rank and file soldiers, and in that particular movement. It's just interesting how the facts come together when you do the actual math. No pun
Yeah.
intended there either. Um, a lot of great information has matriculated through that organization to the people, even on down to what some would call, which I refrain from, the dregs of society. You would have many of the undesirables named amongst us, from the child lovers to the drug peddlers, okay,
Mhm.
to the smut peddlers, to the women
To the
abusers, to
to
the
the gangster rapper, to the
so those that gravitate towards a certain information do not determine the value of the information. Is the only reason I'm saying all of this.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And but you are absolutely correct. They went the path of the sunnah. The conversation by according to Warith Dean Muhammad and some of the interviews that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of viewing and listening to, he was setting the record straight. Mr. Farrakhan did not protest anything that he had to say. He set the record straight on who actually said that they were God within that particular faith and organization. He set the record straight on whether they were a political organization or a religious one. He set the record straight on the plan to always um, position and eventually take on Orthodox Islam as the main focus of the Nation of Islam. Now, there are those who still dispute that to this day, who were right along with uh, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the infancy of the organization. Some of them are, in their 90s. Some of them were younger men who were newly converted or moved into higher positions for their age group or their demographic at the time, but now are in leadership within the rank and file of other bands of the NOI, whether it be Southern under the Son of Man, whether it be Southern Ohio and Midwest under Brother Royale, or whether it be under the Most Honorable Louis Minister Farrakhan. And then there was, of course, those who had followed Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, may he rest in power, had some philosophical differences with Minister Farrakhan and some strong words as to why they had to separate as far as their positioning as leaders into what would eventually be like a split faction, of the
he,
same organization. So,
if we had a phrase for it now, Farrakhan thought that Khaled was doing too much.
and in a way, he wasn't, because I agree with probably 93% of what Khaled had to say, but I only agreed with about 77% of what Minister Farrakhan still has to say. And it's because of certain obvious oversights. I'll just put them at that. I don't like to point a finger of accusation. Uh, and I know that no man is infallible, even if they were the messenger of an almighty God. Uh, being that they are studying the form of this God through a group of writings that states there's more than one God, and that theirs was simply the best at certain tasks within the godlike quality category. I have to look at everything with a grain of salt, so as to not judge another man's servant. You
Mhm.
know,
You made me think of Steve Coakley.
okay. How
I,
so?
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna really go into it. I just would say Steve Coakley does some
Go into it.
great.
Even just touch. We can always double back at some other point. But
um, Steve Coakley does a great breakdown of what the mission of Boule, which Boule is, you can look that up too. Boule, the mission of the Boule members is to protect the identity of and personage of a royal family member, a lead ranking affiliate of these organizations. So when you have interesting thing to look at, you have W.D. Farrar, who was half, they say was a half European. He was half white, and then he had his other half.
I would say Indo-Aryan, but I know what you're saying. I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah, and
Indo-Aryan.
it's some royalty somewhere. He was related to royalty, and it's interesting that Elijah and Farrakhan protected that man to the extent that they did. And there's even speculative theories that come from members of the NOI that show this man continuing on his life in secrecy amongst them and intermingling with their family and relatives.
Now,
That's another.
not to cut you off, but
Mhm,
I've come across that thought process as well,
mhm,
and in no judgment of the thought process, that is a protect. My opinion is a protectionary conversation in and of itself. I mean,
mhm,
the man that they called Gollum, who was the actual teacher of the Ahmadiyya community in Chicago when they went from Detroit to Illinois, from Michigan to Illinois. He very much favors what the possible look physically, aesthetically of W.D. Farad Muhammad would have looked like had he lived on past the period in which they say he met his demise or what have you, or went back over to the Middle East. So I'm not to be argumentative. I'm just saying, like I've heard that as well, and that
mhm.
is something to consider. Um, the reason
But
why my opinion differs from that stated conversation is, like I said, there's a protectionary factor. Like just as much as they protected that man and his image, they threw off on him as their protection when called into question by certain entities and agencies. It's just like Yeshua, right? We were talking about this earlier. My kingdom is not of this world. If it were
mhm,
of this world, then I would suffer my disciples to fight for me, that I would not be delivered into the hands of these Jews, right? I know who set me up, in other words. But so do you honestly think if I'm from another worldly kingdom that I wouldn't have the wisdom to tell my disciples to stand up for me so I wouldn't end up here? This is my plan, right? So the plan was, like, for example, 1942, check out the Battle of Los Angeles. There's an excellent video put out by a brother minister within the Nation of Islam called The Wheels. His name is Elia Rashad Muhammad. I highly recommend his research. Like I said, there's great information matriculated through that organization, but
mhm,
it's up to us what we do with it, or if we, like they say, let it alone, right? And
mhm.
I'm not encouraging them
How
to
many
follow.
wives does he have? Does he have one wife or multiple?
I'm not sure. Don't
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter to me. I'm not one of those people. As long as they're above the age of
Oh,
consent.
oh, no! I wasn't even going to approach it
That
from
was a
that.
little that was a little jokey joke. Sorry, sorry. Please forgive me. I just
Oh,
gotta
no,
keep
that
it right
wasn't.
sometime. But Battle of Los
I was
Angeles,
saying it's
1942.
interesting that they got that many women. And if the women hold anyway.
Battle of Los Angeles, 1942. I don't want to talk about the women today because you're gonna take me there. So Battle of Los Angeles, 1942. He's called into question. He meaning Minister Robert Elijah Poole, also better known as Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Mm-hmm. So the president of the United States was questioning him about some drawings and diagrams that he had disseminated to his followers. And they were so right and exact to what they saw, the people saw. Over 22,000 people were eyewitness to this event. They call it the Battle of Los Angeles. Check it out, 1942. I highly encourage you to do the research. I don't want to give you any more information on what took place. Let's just say your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. There's somewhere that Muhammad Ali got that saying from. I'm not saying Bundini Brown didn't contribute to it, but there's a whole nother science behind that as well. So they wanted to know why they couldn't make contact in their attacks against what they were seeing in the skies. And they were told that it was men that looked just like us piloting these crafts, and they were made in a very specific region of the world that the U.S. had not necessarily already mapped out prior. So you could look at it two ways. He gave him some information that they probably maybe shouldn't have had. And then also at the same time, he knew some information that they probably should have had, but did not know that they didn't have. So, there's always more than one vantage point is all I'm getting at. And depending on where you stand could make it good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of how. But their teachers were often on the side that they called the adversary. Their contributors were also from people who they were saying openly were adversaries. It's just something to take note of. And then now there's a deal stricken by the current leader with, I shouldn't say stricken, right? Struck, signed off on, with the Church of L. Ron Hubbard, also called Scientology. So there's just some very interesting pathways that have been chosen, and it is above my pay grade because I don't get paid by them, and I have no direct personal bone or ought with the minister, so I never wish to provoke such. However, I do think that it's not an area that we shouldn't discuss. I don't think that it's above highlighting certain questions and bringing up certain concerns that some of us who have been fighting the good fight through a non-conventional means for years would like to have. We'd like to be afforded the opportunity to have that conversation without the finger pointing, shouting, yelling, name calling, or any of that, labeling. Notice I haven't said agent. I haven't said ops. I just saying, let's just use hypotheticals. What if your oath was to not keep the original oath? So as long as you don't deal with the information of the original oath, but you out other things that are considered to be secret, but in actuality are not, you can be a hero to some people while yet not breaking your oath.
A 1,000,000-man march where over 1,000,000 people showed up and was willing to do anything. From that point, you could have told them all, give you $20 right now. They'd have broke out their wallets and gave you $20. You could have said, let's all go this way. They would have all went that way. But you left the stage and then left the country. So you were those people's hero. You had them thinking we was about to make a move. We about to do something. And then, skirt, put the brakes on it.
I mean, of course, this rabbit hole goes real deep, even down to the use of the terminology black, knowing full well that, you know, these people, if they were already in the hells of North America when North America was not hell like at all, the land of milk and honey, it was called by all those who sought after it, and many a men paid a small and major fortune just to see it before they actually had any military might to come and conquer it. I mean, what else would be, what else would be the motive behind the stories of Ponce de Leon? What not Cabeza de Vaca? He was with Columbus. Ponce de Leon and what's the other one? Hernan Cortez, looking for the city of gold. Why would where would these stories come from? Where would these stories come from? Seems to me like some Moors have some explaining to do. I'm just saying.
Mm.
I mean, they were the most
And just for people who are
able.
tuning in, you may think we left the conversation of spiritual DNA, but we never
It just
left.
continued on into the subject matter at hand. I mean, whose line do you carry? That's the question you ask yourself. You don't want to make it anyone else's business. Don't. You want to brag about your pedigree. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure you know your genealogy. Please don't take these DNA tests as serious. They cannot possibly tell you who your ancestors are by genetics from living people. That can tell you, they can tell you who your current relatives are. And this is a very diverse human family nonetheless. We're all connected somehow, but we're not all related.
And an interesting journey to go backwards in too is follow the matriarch back. We're always following the patriarch back. An interesting line to follow back. Follow the matriarchs back and see where they take you. How many generations hit before you hit a native, what do you call it? I don't Native American, native Indian name.
And then, yes, a First Nations family, original family member, I
Mhm.
would say. But yes, some people would consider that Native American, even though that's legally an entirely different concept. The legal and the colloquial don't always overlap in that way. And then, of course, when you deal with patrilineal DNA, you're dealing with the autosomal genetics. It would be your father's mother, and of course her father and his mother, and then her mother and her mother, and so all of that is matrilineal DNA, even though you have it from coming from a paternal side. But yeah, so absolutely, the families of the world. There's been much conflict. There's been a lot of double dealing, betrayal, um, mistreatment, misuse, enslavement, um, entitlement, um, theft, thievery, and all manners of shenanigans that have taken place. So hopefully, we will revisit this topic very, very soon, and
And
we'll promise to do it in a little more structured way,
yes,
uh,
indeed, yes, indeed.
a
And
little more, just a little
I
more.
just want to add on one last thing. The ultimate rebuttal to this type of thievery and everything like that is to be who you are,
Indeed.
regardless of what anybody is trying to get you to be.
Absolutely, indeed, indeed. So yeah, man, don't go out harassing people or rank and file members of organizations that are seeking to do better. You know, we were always taught growing up good, better, best. Never let it rest till your
See,
good gets better and your better gets best. Ain't none of us the best yet. I'm just saying. And
mm-hmm.
that's not to be negative self speak or trying to rain on your parade if you're watching or listening. It's just saying we can all do better. I can't spend my entire life's energy trying to bring nobody else down. I got too much climbing I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to get there faster by trying to throw another man off the ledge. So please, hopefully you don't misconstrue any truths that we're bringing to light. We simply want to spur you and encourage you to research, do the math for yourself. If the math's not mathing, sit back down at that drawing board and draw out the equation again and make it make sense. That's all I got for you. Brother T, Black Sun Shaman, anything you want to leave with the people before we go?
Be yourself.
There you have it. Be yourself. Thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, comment, critique. Just be fair and be yourself.